The space station floated quietly above a dying red star. Its metal surface shimmered under the star's weak light. Inside, hundreds of alien beings from across the galaxy gathered in a large hall. They had come for one reason: the great slave auction. The hall was filled with noise. Some aliens chatted in strange languages. Others watched the stage with hungry eyes. This was not a place of kindness. Here, beings were bought and sold like objects. On the stage, behind a force field, stood a group of slaves. They came from many different species, some with scales, some with fur, some with long tentacles. All were strong, trained, and useful. The buyers looked at them with interest. At the back of the group stood a single human. He looked different. Smaller, softer, not impressive. His name was Jake. His short brown hair was messy, and his clothes were torn. He stood quietly, watching the crowd with tired but alert eyes. The auction began. "Next up," shouted the auctioneer, a tall, silver-skinned alien with glowing red eyes. "You're one of the last from the Terran system. Strong, loyal, obedient." First slave was sold in minutes, then another, and another. Alien buyers fought with credits and offers to get the best warriors and workers, soon. Only a few were left. Jake waited as one by one, the others were taken. Some were bought by rich merchants, others by warlords or mining companies. No one looked at Jake. No one asked his name. He was just ignored. The auctioneer tried his best. "This one," he shouted, pointing at Jake. "A human, creative thinkers, quick learners. Not to be underestimated." Silence, no one made a bid. A green-skinned alien laughed. "A human, worthless." Another added they break easily. "I'll used one once, weak bones, soft muscles. Not worth even scrap metal," said a third. The auctioneer grew nervous. He looked at Jake, then back at the crowd. Opening bid, 100 credits. Anyone? Anyone. Nothing. Jake stood still. His hands were tied, but he didn't beg. He didn't cry. He just watched. It was quiet and calm. The auctioneer sighed. 50 credits? 30. Still, no response. Then a voice came from the back. "I'll take him." The crowd turned. A tall, armored figure stepped forward. His armor was worn, scratched from battles. A blaster was on his side. His helmet covered his face, but his voice was cold and firm. "Who are you?" the auctioneer asked. "Captain Aaron?" "Mercenary." The man stepped closer. "He's useless to you. I'll give you 10 credits." "Final offer, 10. The auctioneer gasped. "That's barely above scrap." Captain Aaron shrugged. "You want to feed him here forever? Or take the credits?" The auctioneer looked around. No one else said a word. No one wanted the human. "Fine," the auctioneer growled. "Sold. 10 credits. Take him and go." Jake was pulled forward. His hands were unlocked, but he was pushed roughly toward Aaron. The captain looked down at him for a moment. Jake looked up. "I guess I'm yours now. I don't like talking." "Slaves," Aaron said, turning around. "Follow, and don't slow me down." Jake didn't reply. He followed. The crowd behind them laughed and whispered, "A human? Why? Aaron must be desperate." Throwing away credits, Jake heard it all. He said nothing. Captain Aaron's ship was docked in one of the lower bays. It wasn't large, but it was strong. Thick metal plates covered its sides, and heavy weapons were mounted along its frame. It looked like a warship, and it was. As they entered, a tall, lizard-like alien stepped forward. "Captain, what's that?" Human Aaron replied. Needed an extra hand. "He'll clean the lower decks." The lizard frowned. "Or slow. Weak." Aaron ignored him. He walked to the control room. Jake stood in the middle of the ship, looking around. The crew stared at him. Some laughed. Some ignored him completely. One even hissed. Jake kept his head down. He was used to this. He had once been a mechanic on a human ship, and his colony was attacked. It was taken, sold, passed from one owner to another. None wanted him for long. Now he was here. Back in the auction hall, the auctioneer packed up. "A waste," he muttered. "Humans are finished. That one won't last a week." He was wrong. Jake might have looked weak, but something inside him refused to break. He had been beaten, starved, and ignored, but never crushed. He had survived too much to give up now, and deep inside, something else was growing. Not fear, not anger, but purpose. He didn't know what his new life would be like on this ship, but he had one goal: prove them all wrong. The hum of the ship's engines filled the air as it slipped silently through space. Inside, the cold metal walls reflected the dim lights of the control panels. Jake stood in the cargo bay, his arms crossed, watching the alien crew move around. They did not speak to him, except to give orders or insults. The lizard-like alien Grix sneered. "Human, clean that deck, and don't slow me down." Jake nodded quietly. He bent down and began scrubbing the floor with a worn cloth. His muscles ached from days without proper rest, but he didn't complain. The aliens thought he was weak, but Jake knew better. It survived worse. Captain Aaron sat in the control room watching the crew with tired eyes. He had bought Jake because he needed cheap labor, nothing more.
Bought it.
But even he had to admit, the human had a strange look in his eyes, not fear, not sadness, but something else. Determination. Days passed. The ship moved from system to system, taking on small jobs, hauling cargo, escorting transports, sometimes even smuggling. The crew was rough and unfriendly, but Jake kept his head down, learning. He watched how the aliens worked the ships. Controls, how they prepared weapons, how they repaired engines. One evening, the ship landed on a dusty planet. The crew went to a nearby tavern for drinks and rest. Jake stayed behind, cleaning the engine room. He preferred silence to the noise and harsh laughter of the tavern. Suddenly a voice called out from behind, "You don't drink with the rest of us." Jake turned. It was Lyra, a tall, blue-skinned alien with sharp eyes. She worked as the ship's weapons specialist. Her voice was soft, but had an edge. "I'm not interested," Jake said simply. Lyra stepped closer.
"You're different from
the others? I see it. But why hide?" Jake shrugged. "No one cares about a human here." She smiled a little sad. "Maybe they don't, but I do." "Tell me, what do you want?" Jake hesitated. No one had ever asked before. Finally, he said, "I want to survive. I want to prove I'm worth more than what they think." Lyra nodded. "Good answer. Maybe you will." Back on the ship, tensions were growing. Grix and some others laughed at Jake's slow work, mocking him openly. "Look at the human. Can't even fix a simple engine," Grix shouted. Jake ignored them. Instead, he studied the engine's parts carefully. The ship's engines were old, complicated machines. Most of the crew only knew the basics, but Jake had learned more during his time as a mechanic. One day, the engine sputtered and lost power. The ship began to drift. Panic spread among the crew. Captain Aaron cursed. "What now? Fix it," Grix growled. "The human will fail. Watch and laugh." Jake stepped forward. "Let me try." The crew stared. Aaron hesitated, then nodded. "But if you mess up, you're finished." Jake knelt by the engine. His hands moved quickly but carefully. He checked wires, cleaned parts, and tightened loose bolts. The others watched, some shaking their heads. Minutes passed. The engine rumbled back to life. The ship stopped drifting and moved forward again. The crew stared in shock. Grix's face darkened, but he said nothing. Captain Aaron gave a rare nod. Not bad. Jake's success changed something. The aliens began to look at him differently, with curiosity, even respect. Lyra approached him again. "You saved us." Jake smiled. "I just fixed what was broken. Still, that's more than many could do." Over the next weeks, Jake worked harder. He cleaned, repaired, and learned. Slowly, the crew started to accept him, but not everyone. Grix stayed cold and hostile. "The human is lucky," he hissed. "Two others. One day he'll fail. Then we'll." See, Jake knew the danger, but he didn't care. He had no home now, no family. This ship and its crew were his chance to survive, maybe even thrive. One night, while the ship floated near a small asteroid belt, alarms suddenly blared. "Pirates," Lyra shouted. "They're attacking." The The crew scrambled to battle stations. Captain Aaron grabbed his blaster. Jake felt his heart race. He had never fought in space battles before. But he did not freeze. "Help me with the weapons," Lyra ordered. Jake rushed to the weapons control panel. It was complicated with many buttons and screens. Lyra showed him how to aim and fire the ship's lasers. The pirate ship appeared on the screen faster, bigger, and armed with deadly weapons. The battle began. Lasers flashed through space. The ship shook as it was hit. The crew worked together. But fear was everywhere. Some aliens shouted, others prayed. Jake focused on the controls. His hands moved with surprising skill. He fired the lasers at the pirates' engines, hitting them one by one. "Keep firing," Lyra urged. Jake did. The pirates grew angry and aggressive, but Jake stayed calm, found weak points in their attacks, and warned the crew. Slowly, the tide turned. The pirate ship was damaged and forced to retreat. The crew cheered, "Captain!" Aaron clapped Jake on the shoulder. "You did good. Not bad for a worthless human." Jake smiled, tired but proud. After the battle, the crew gathered. For the first time, Jake was not ignored. Aliens came to him with questions and thanks. Lyra smiled warmly. "You're not just a slave anymore. You're part of this crew." Jake looked around. For the first time, he felt like he belonged somewhere. "Maybe," he said quietly, "I am worth something." Captain Aaron stood nearby, watching. His eyes were sharp but softer now. The captain thought, maybe humans aren't so worthless after all. Jake still had a long way to go. The galaxy was dangerous, and many challenges awaited. But one thing was clear. Jake was no longer just a forgotten human left behind. He was becoming something stronger, a survivor, a fighter, a part of something bigger, and he would prove to the galaxy that humans were not worthless. The stars outside blinked slowly as the ship moved through a quiet part of space. It was supposed to be a safe route. No pirates, no patrols, no trouble. The crew relaxed, believing they had earned a break after the last fight, but Jake was not relaxed. He was in the engine room, double-checking systems. He had noticed small power flickers all day. Nothing big, just strange glitches. The others thought it was nothing, but Jake had seen patterns like this before. Sudden system errors. Tiny drops in power. Strange signals in the background. Something was wrong. On the bridge, Captain Aaron leaned back in his chair. Lyra stood at the weapons console, humming a low tune. Grix was on patrol near the storage bay, muttering to himself. Jake walked onto the bridge, "Captain," he said carefully. "I think something is watching us." Aaron frowned. "What do you mean?" "Found unusual signals. Quiet, hidden. Like someone is scanning us, slowly, trying not to be noticed." Grix laughed from the doorway. "You see ghosts now, human?" Jake ignored him. "We should run a full system check, just to be safe." Aaron looked at Lyra. She shrugged. "No harm checking. The kid's been right before." "Fine," the captain said. "Run the scan." Jake sat at the side console. He pressed a few buttons. The screen lit up. The ship's lights flickered. Then everything went dark. The engine stopped. The lights turned off. Even the air system shut down for a second. "Emergency power," Aaron shouted. Red lights blinked on. The ship was running on. Backup systems. Only basic functions were online? "What happened?" Lyra asked. Jake's fingers flew across the console. "It's not a failure. Someone hit us with an EMP, a blast that shuts down electronics. A pirate trap," Aaron growled. "They hit us before we saw them." Outside, space was silent, but in the dark, something was coming. A small, black ship drifted out from the shadow of an asteroid. It had no lights, no radio signals. It moved like a ghost, slow, careful, deadly. Inside the ship, the crew could see it now on their emergency radar. "Weapons offline," Lyra said. "Shields down. We're sitting ducks. Can we restart the main systems?" Aaron asked Jake. Shook his head. "They'll come back online in 5 minutes." "Maybe. We don't have 5 minutes," Lyra said. They'll board us by then, Grix growled, readying a blade. Let them come. Jake stood up. We can slow them down. How? Aaron asked. Jake looked at the ship's design on the screen. We still have control of manual doors. Right? Yes, Lyra said, but only close range. Jake nodded. Then we lead them into the lower halls. Lock them in section by section. Trap them until the systems restart. It's risky, Aaron said. Jake looked at him. Better than waiting to die, the plan began. Jake, Lyra, and Grix moved through the ship in the dark, only red emergency lights guiding them. They placed traps where they could, small tools, wires, anything sharp. They knew the pirates would break in through the cargo bay. They waited. A loud clang echoed through the ship. They're here, Grix whispered. The pirates moved fast. Dark shapes with helmets and silent guns. They didn't speak. They just moved through the halls like shadows. Jake watched from behind a corner. He waited until the pirates passed. Then he slammed the manual door shut. Clang. 2 pirates were locked inside a storage room. More came from another side. Lyra fired a small energy pistol. The pirates ducked. Jake ran to the next panel and sealed another hallway, step by step. They slowed the invaders, but the pirates were smart. They found another path, straight toward the engine room. We have to stop them, Aaron said, gripping. His blaster. Jake stopped him. Let me, you. Jake nodded. I know the engine room better than anyone. The captain stared at him for a moment, then nodded. Go. Jake raced to the engine room. He hid behind a support beam, breathing fast. The room was dark, except for the red warning lights. The pirates entered. 3 of them, silent. Armed, Jake held a wrench tightly. One pirate moved close to the core, checking controls. Jake jumped from the shadows and slammed the wrench into the pirate's helmet. Crack. The pirate dropped. The other 2 turned, weapons up. Jake dived behind a crate. A shot missed him by inches. He grabbed a loose wire, ripped it out, and tossed it toward the fuel leak he had noticed earlier. Sparks. Boom. A small explosion filled the room with smoke. Jake coughed, eyes burning, but kept moving. He grabbed a dropped weapon, fired once and hit the second pirate. The last one turned to flee, but Jake slammed into him, knocking him to the ground. He tied the pirate with cable, breathing hard. Engine room secure, he said into the com minutes later. The main power returned. Lights flickered back to life. The crew stood in silence. Looking around, the ship was saved. Jake stood in the engine room, bruised and dirty but alive. Captain Aaron and Lyra arrived. You took down 3 pirates by yourself? Aaron asked Dot. Jake shrugged. Had to. Lyra smiled. You're full of surprises, human. Aaron looked at him closely. You're not like the others we've picked up before. You think fast. You fight smart. Jake nodded. I told you I'm not worthless. Aaron put a hand on his shoulder. No, you're not. From that day, Jake was no longer treated like cargo or a servant. He was one of them crew, respected, trusted. And though danger still waited in the stars, Jake had proved something important. Even in the dark, even when forgotten, human could light the way. The ship hummed steadily as it cut through the vast emptiness of space. After the pirate attack, the crew had settled into a cautious routine. Yet the mood on the ship was different. Jake was no longer the forgotten slave or the worthless human. He'd earned respect, but more importantly, he'd earned trust. Captain Aaron sat at the helm, his eyes scanning the stars. Lyra was at her weapons console, tuning the ship's laser cannons. Jake stood nearby, watching quietly, learning every move. Jake, Aaron said suddenly, breaking the silence. Come here. Jake approached the captain's chair, feeling a mixture of curiosity and nervousness. I want you to teach the crew. Some of those tricks you used back in the engine room, Aaron said. If you can help us work smarter, we'll all live longer. Jake blinked in surprise. Teach them? Aaron nodded. They respect you now, but respect isn't enough. Need skill. We need you. That night, in the ship's small training room, Jake stood before a group of aliens, lizard-like Grix, blue-skinned Lyra, and others of various shapes and sizes. All looked curious but doubtful. Jake cleared his throat. I know you don't think humans are strong or fast, but we survive by using our brains and working together. He pulled out a worn datapad and started explaining simple but effective techniques for teamwork, quick repairs, and problem-solving under pressure. At first, some crew members rolled their eyes. Grix scoffed loudly. Changes in repair order could save time, or how using makeshift tools could fix broken systems fast. The crew began to listen. Over the next days, Jake worked with the crew. He helped them fix broken parts faster and taught new ways to use the ship's weapons. Lyra started training alongside him, eager to learn and share ideas. Slowly, the ship became more efficient. Repairs happened faster. The crew moved with better coordination. Even Grix grudgingly admitted that Jake's ideas worked. One morning, while Jake checked the engine room, the ship's alarm blared suddenly. Incoming ship, Lyra shouted from the control room. Jake hurried to the bridge. Captain Aaron's face was tense as a large black warship appeared on their radar, closing fast. Enemy warship, Aaron growled. They want to take our cargo. The crew scrambled to prepare weapons and shields. Jake's heart pounded, but he kept calm. We can't outrun them, Lyra said, her hands moving over the controls. Then we fight, Aaron said. Jake stepped forward. Captain, I have an idea. Aaron raised an eyebrow. Go on, Jake explained quickly. If we use the asteroid field nearby, we can hide. Then while they try to follow, we strike from close range using our new tactics. Aaron nodded slowly. It's risky, but it might work. The ship dove toward the asteroid field. The enemy warship followed, bigger and more heavily armed. Inside the field, the rocks were thick and dangerous. One wrong move could smash the ship to pieces. Jake helped coordinate the crew. Slow and steady, he said. Watch for debris. The crew moved carefully, following Jake's commands. Suddenly, the enemy ship fired a burst of lasers. The ship shook shields down to 50%, Lyra shouted. Jake quickly told the crew how to repair the shields. Faster by working together in pairs, they patched the damage before the next attack. The enemy ship grew angry. It fired again and again. But Jake and the crew stayed calm. Using their new teamwork and tricks, they dodged attacks and fired back with precision, at close range. Jake took control of the ship's turrets and fired on the enemy's engines. Sparks flew. The enemy ship slowed. Now, Aaron shouted. Party, prepare to strike. But Jake held up a hand. Wait, we don't have to fight hand to hand. Let's force them to retreat. He explained a plan to use the ship's emergency systems to create false power surges, loud noises, and sparks. That would make the enemy think the ship was about to explode. Aaron trusted him. Jake and Lyra set the plan in motion. The enemy ship's sensors picked up the false alarms. Warning: critical failure detected. Panic spread on the enemy ship. They broke off the attack and fled. The crew cheered. After the battle, Aaron looked at Jake with new respect. You saved us again. You're not just a mechanic or a slave. You're part of this crew. Jake smiled. I just want to survive, and maybe help others survive too. Lyra clapped him on the back. You're teaching us that humans aren't just weak. Grix grunted. Maybe we were wrong about you. Jake laughed. Maybe. That night, as the ship traveled on, Jake looked out at the stars. He thought about how far he had come from a slave left behind at an auction to a trusted member of a spaceship crew. He didn't know what the future held, but he was ready, because being human meant never giving up. The ship moved steadily through a quiet star system. The crew had grown stronger and closer since the pirate attacks. Jake's presence was no longer a question, but a valued part of the ship's life. Still, space was full of surprises, and not all of them were friendly. Captain Aaron was in the control room, staring at a new signal on the scanner. It was a message, encrypted and strange. Captain Lyra said, stepping in. Someone is trying to contact us, but the message is blocked. Aaron frowned. Can you decode it? Lyra shook her head. Not without help. Jake walked up. Let me try. Aaron raised an eyebrow but nodded. Jake connected his datapad to the ship's console and began working. The message was strange, not from any known race, but there was something urgent in its code. After a few tense minutes, Jake cracked part of it. It's a warning, he said quietly, about a group hunting ships like ours. Aaron looked. Grim. Enemies still after us? More than that, Jake said. They want something from us, or from me. The room went quiet. Later in the mess hall, Jake sat with Lyra and Grix. The two aliens stared at him. Why would anyone want you? Grix asked gruffly. Jake sighed. I don't know yet, but I think it has to do with my past, or maybe my species. Lyra leaned in. You're special, Jake. Not just because you survive. There's something in humans that others fear. Jake shook his head. I'm just trying to live. That night, while the crew slept, a shadow moved outside the ship. A small, silent ship slipped close, hidden by darkness. A hatch opened. A figure floated in space, carrying a small device it attached to the hull, a scanner. Inside the ship, Jake was restless. He couldn't sleep. He moved to the observation deck, staring at the stars. Suddenly, alarms blared. Hull breach detected, Lyra shouted. The crew scrambled. The scanner device was found and destroyed, but it was clear someone was watching. Then Captain Aaron gathered the crew. We are not safe, he said. Someone wants to find us, and maybe capture Jake. Jake stepped forward. Then we have to be ready. The crew nodded. For the next days, the ship's speed increased. Crew doubled their watch shifts. Jake trained with the others, sharpening his skills. One day, Lyra approached Jake with a serious look. Captain wants to test your loyalty, she said quietly. Jake frowned. What kind of test? You'll have to prove you are with us, no matter what. Jake nodded. I'm ready. The test came sooner than expected. A signal appeared on the scanner, a ship requesting help. The message sounded desperate. Aaron looked at Jake. You decide. Jake studied the message. It was a trap. If we help them, they'll capture us. Aaron nodded. What do you suggest? Jake thought fast. We send a small drone to pretend. To help, but really spy on them, the crew agreed. The drone flew toward the ship, sending the signal. Jake and Lyra watched the screen carefully. Suddenly, the drone's signal went dark. The trap was real. Prepare for attack, Aaron ordered. The enemy ship appeared on the scanner, fast and heavily armed. The crew fought hard. Jake worked the weapons console, firing lasers with precision. Grix led the boarding defense. The fight was fierce. When the battle ended, the enemy ship fled. The crew cheered. Captain Aaron smiled at Jake. You passed the test. You're one of us. Jake smiled back. I'm here to stay. Later, Jake stood by the window, looking at the stars. He knew the hunt was not over, but he was no longer alone. He was part of a crew that trusted him, and that made all the difference. The ship glided through the endless blackness of space, its crew alert and prepared. The warnings had been clear. The hunters were closing in. No more chance to run, no more chances to hide. The final battle was coming, and Jake knew this. Time, it was all or nothing. Captain Aaron gathered the crew in the small common room. The air was tense. We face our enemies soon, Aaron said, his voice firm. They want Jake. They want this ship. But we will not give them either. Jake looked around at the faces of the crew, aliens of many kinds, all ready to fight beside him. Lyra stepped forward. We've trained hard. We've survived attacks. This time we fight to win. Grix grunted but nodded. No more games. Ship sensors blinked rapidly. Contact, Lyra shouted. Outside, a fleet of dark ships appeared, surrounding them like vultures. The enemy was here. The battle began. Lasers fired from all sides. The ship shook violently. Jake manned the weapons console. His hands moved fast, his mind sharp. He aimed carefully, taking down enemy fighters one by one, shields holding. Lyra reported. But the enemy pressed hard. Suddenly, one ship broke. Threw the shields and aimed directly for the bridge. "Boarders," Crick shouted. The enemy stormed inside. Jake grabbed a weapon and ran to defend the bridge. The fight inside the ship was brutal but quick. Jake fought with everything he had. He remembered all the lessons: teamwork, courage, using the ship's design to his advantage. Together, the crew pushed the enemy back. On the bridge, Captain Aaron faced the enemy leader, a tall, armored alien with cold eyes. "You won't stop us," the enemy said. Aaron smiled. "Watch us." Meanwhile, Jake moved to the engine room. He knew the ship's heart better than anyone. If he could boost the engines, they could make a fast escape. But the enemy knew this too. A guard blocked. The way Jake didn't hesitate. He fought past, using quick moves and strong will. Inside the engine room, Jake worked frantically, repairing systems damaged in the fight. "Almost there," he whispered. With a final surge, the engines roared to life. Back on the bridge, Aaron and the enemy leader circled each other. Suddenly, Aaron lunged forward and disarmed the enemy. "Give up," Aaron said firmly. The enemy leader hesitated, then dropped his weapon. The battle was over. The enemy fleet retreated. Beaten, the ship was damaged but alive. The crew gathered, exhausted but victorious. Aaron turned to Jake. "You saved us all." Jake smiled, breathing hard. "We saved each other." Lyra stepped beside Jake. "You're family now." Grix grunted in agreement. Later, in the quiet of the ship, Jake looked at the stars. He thought about the journey from being the last slave left behind to a trusted member of a strong crew. He was no longer worthless. He was human. And he was proud.